Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode on Founders Tribe, a podcast production presented by thestartupchef.com. This is once again your host, Sven Milder, and like every week, I invite inspiring global movers and shakers to the show to casually chat about successful strategies they have deployed to found and build awesome businesses and live fulfilling lives. At the Startup Chef, we are on a mission to elevate and inspire 100,000 founders globally to help them shortcut their road to success by offering easy access to investment capital and world-class expertise. If you want to discover more or download one of our free resources that can help you propel your business forward, visit us at thestartupchef.com. Thestartupchef.com. Now, without further ado, let's jump straight into today's episode. Hey guys, welcome at another podcast episode today where I have my special friend and also serial entrepreneur, I always would like to say, Ilya Kravtsov. Super thank you and welcome to be in today's episode where, of course, we're going to talk about fundraising. We're going to talk about how you have scaled your businesses. We're going to talk about you in person here being in Southeast Asia. But before all of that, I would first like to give a small introduction here. Ilya is the CEO of Pouchnation, a contactless payments on events. That's how it all started, but it has been going everywhere, all over the place, but more about that later. He expanded his business in around 6 countries in Southeast Asia, has in his free time as well, all of the time to mentor other startups through the plug and play program. And what I always like, and that's also why I wanted to have him in today's show, is that it feels that he's always going with the trend and he's always on the new stuff, right? I mean, Ilya, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I would like to straight on jump into it. I still remember that we were having a conversation in Jakarta, and then, you know, as one of these entrepreneurs always sniffing on the new opportunities, you're having these ICOs, and currently you're literally smashing it on Indiegogo, and you have been doing a fundraising where your campaign is 800% overfunded. I just briefly mentioned it as well. You have scaled your company into 6 countries in Southeast Asia. Truly respect for what you're doing, right? But let's start. How do you keep always on the trend, right? What is the thing that you're always, now it's again Indiegogo, you're looking for these alternative ways how you get your company to the next level?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me on this podcast. Look, I mean, it's challenging, right? It's challenging to do something new all the time, but I think this is probably why I've started, being an entrepreneur, because you kind of have this inner desire to always innovate and put out in the market something that hasn't been there before. And I think that's probably one of my main drivers and motivation to do things like that, right? So, I mean, I think there are different founders in general, right? There are some founders who look for new opportunities, some founders who really, feel the pain of certain problems and want to solve them, right? For me, it's really about technology, it's about innovation, it's about coming up with new solutions that people think are exciting. And of course, on the other hand, that can help a little bit the world, right? So that's why, our latest product also on Indiegogo that you mentioned.
So before we're going to talk more about that, because in my opinion, it hits exactly the nerve right now. I mean, the Pouch Pass is one of your latest products. But for those who don't know Ilya, right, you have been starting Pouchnation as a contactless way for people to pay on events, right? Can you tell me a little bit about your journey, how you went from Axiata, actually starting your own company, and bringing it through the different kind of milestones where you're currently at?
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, my background in general is in telcos, right? So I've been working with large telecom operators across the world, both in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia and Middle East. And what I loved about telcos is that they have a huge amount of data, right? That they gather, and I was always thinking, is there a way of thinking more from a data-driven perspective in other more traditional sectors, right? And this is how the whole initial idea of Pouchnation started. Is we're looking at different sectors, and we saw a major opportunity in Southeast Asia in the mass participation event space, right? Southeast Asia is quite particular. It's summer all year round, right? So there's a lot of events happening outdoors and that attract large crowds, right?
Yeah.
And they often happen in remote locations and so on and so forth. And we've seen that those events are very kind of traditional, meaning that there's no technology being used. Often, like, money disappears from the bars, from an F&B. So a lot of inefficiencies, really. And but on the other hand, the target segment of those events is millennials. Is something very interesting. Is the upcoming middle class. So I saw the opportunity of kind of developing a technology for that space that can solve the pain points of efficiency of events on one hand, and on the other hand, also to gather a lot of interesting data that on that specific offline sector. Right. So this is how we kind of kicked off. And that was about already 5-6 years ago. So time flies.
Time flies, man. We also know each other already for a while. Yeah.
Correct. So, and we started that, and I think that the basis of the company was more on what we define crowd control and contactless payments, because we were using NFC wristbands for those large scale events. So forget about paper tickets. Everything was digital. Your entry was programmed on your band, and and your wallet was also programmed on the band, so you could just go inside the festival or the concert and use the wristband for payment, right? And that kind of we did that for a long time, for 4 or 5 years, and became quite successful in Southeast Asia. So in terms of managed to get the biggest events. Things like Zook Out in Singapore for the Singaporean audience who might be listening, or Sensation Wide, a lot of events, a lot of like EDM concerts as well.
Yeah.
Right. So this is kind of was our core, and then what happened recently is obviously we've been struck by this pandemic, which I call it the largest event of our lifetime. Right.
In a beautiful 2020 reminder year, right?
Yeah. And what we realized is that, look, at the end of the day, crowd control and contactless payments is something that before we were using for a very specific use case of mass participation events, but now our market size grew probably 1,000x, because wherever I go, there is screening at the door, there are checks, and nobody wants to pay cash anymore. It's all contactless. So I thought, wow, this is a way for us to kind of innovate as well, right? So that's kind of how the latest product came into action.
Did that idea, because I think idea generation in startups and being innovative constantly in order to entertain your investors and to entertain your users, but also create new revenue streams is extremely important. But can you walk me a little bit through how that idea literally started? Of course, it's COVID, right? But what was that aha moment that you felt like, hey, this could be something?
Look, I think the aha moment is more, so I think in any type, even when you start your company from zero, or if you're already, 4 or 5 years in, and if you want to reinvent yourself and innovate and keep on doing something new, you need to go back to basically understanding what is your core competency, right? And I think this is very important, right? If you start a company, you need to be an expert in something, right? And that will make your life a lot easier. It doesn't mean that you cannot learn new stuff or learn from a new industry, but you need to have an area of expertise, right? So for us, we knew that our area of expertise was, software and wearables. And we said, okay, what can we do that is within that area of expertise that can be more relevant for today, right? And I think we started looking at solutions that can basically enhance the access control feature that is required. And we know that a lot of governments are now requiring everybody to do temperature checks and contact tracing and all that. So we said, okay, how can we solve these particular two problems of temperature checks and contact tracing in a more efficient way? Right. And this is where we said, okay, look, is it possible to, do it through a wearable, right? And we started looking at a lot of hardware solutions, a lot of So it was a lot of research, I have to say, from a certain perspective, right? And understanding whether it's even possible to measure, temperature from your wrist, right? It's it's not as simple to kind of to do, right? So I think there was a lot of different question marks we had. We knew that there were some sensors available in the market that could measure, temperature of your wrist, but not necessarily your core body temperature. And then we said, okay, let's give it a shot, right? And especially in these times, I think a lot of companies suffer, but a lot of companies also reinvent themselves. So it's kind of tabula rasa. So there's a lot of new opportunity out there. So the moment where we actually kind of this aha moment and say, look, nothing to lose. It doesn't cost us a lot of effort, right? Let's try it for 1 or 2 months and see how it goes. So that's kind of how we started with this newest product.
For me, it was being very proud of you when I first saw this passing by, because I literally saw all of the opportunities that are actually possible through this new innovation. Previously, you were very much focused on events,
Yeah.
locations where people are coming together and simplifying their experience to make the payments. Very useful for girls. You don't need to bring the bags anymore. Right? There's a lot of user cases that you can use this for the event organizers. And then when I first encountered this initiative, I thought like, okay, now Pouchnation has the power to not only be a safety tool for people and also not sell your skin a little bit to the devil, because of course, if we do everything on our smartphones, I mean, the smartphone track a lot, but the wearable keeps it a bit more remotely. And what I thought, like, if people all start wearing this from a protective motivation, then naturally you can build a whole ecosystem around it where people later on being able to do their payment in a certain way without using their Apple Pay or their GoPay or whatsoever, right? So have you been thinking about that as well, or what?
Look, I actually, yeah, I have been thinking, and in general, obviously everything happened so quickly, and then I had some recent conversations with a few of investors that I've been knowing for a while, and I think one thing that resonated is that one of the investors we've been talking, he's saying, look, 20 years ago, somebody put a bomb in a shoe and then tried to go board an airplane, right? It happened once, maybe 20 years ago. But since then, for 20 years, every time we board an airplane, we need to take our shoes off, right? So she was saying, look, certain things that happen, really kind of change the world. And he was saying, look, this pandemic will change the world, right, in one way or another, and even if it goes away, it's the habits are there to stay for a long time, right? And this is basically where our thinking is also going, right? So what I believe in long term, obviously now we can monitor your body temperature, we can monitor who you've been in contact with, obviously following the privacy standards, but where I think it's all going is what I call digital health identity, right? I think inevitably in the future, wherever you buy an insurance or wherever you board an airplane, people will want to know your health track. Right? You have records, right? And
we're done with all of the forms. It just needs to be there, right?
yeah, and it cannot be paper forms. It has to be more automated. It has to be more digital. And I think this is the space where particularly for me is interesting, right? Because it's how do you create that digital health identity, which on one hand is very, how to say, privacy compliant. On the other hand, is useful information to avoid things like spreading of pandemics and things like that, right? So what is the balance there, and how can you make it work, right? So that's basically the long-term thinking, I think, where this goes to.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you illustrate super well that if nobody goes to an event, that you reinvent your own wheel and now create a whole new market. So I'm very happy to follow this journey as well. I would like to take this opportunity. The campaign on Indiegogo is still live, right? At the time that we're recording this podcast is on the Tuesday. I forgot the date, 18th of August. So if you want to have your hands on one of these amazing wearables and be join the journey, actually, how these digital health is going to improve and how this company is going to the next level, I would definitely add it to the show notes so people can follow up and take care that the 800% overfunded becomes maybe, who knows, 2000% overfunded through our audience. And this brings me as well back to alternative ways of funding. I mean, you have closed your last Series B round in February, if I'm not mistaken. Before the call, we were also checking in, like, okay, hey, how is the fundraising doing? He's like, okay, I wasn't even able to close remotely my investment deal, so things are going very well. You did before the ICO, that was to raise money. You're currently raising money through Indiegogo. A lot of people are going the traditional route into VC land, investor land. How is your experience with the alternative ways of funding, and what is your opinion about that?
Yeah, I think you need to be creative here as well, right? So, and I think sometimes when I, as part of the plug and play accelerator, when I mentor startups that are just starting out, say, look, first of all, you need to know what type of company you want to build, right? I think that's the key thing that you need to kind of clarify for yourself. Do you want to build a company which is, a unicorn? Do you want to build a company which is highly profitable and you pay yourself dividends? What do you want, right? And I think that is something that I think a lot of people forget when they start their businesses, right? They say, okay, I want to make money, but what do you actually, there's different ways of making money as well, right? There's ways of selling the company, being profitable and so on and so forth. So I think this is the first question that I think people need to answer, right? And of course the answer is conditioned by, certain industries, right? In certain industries, especially if you go, very consumer, then, you will need a lot of funding and you will need to appeal to certain type of investors, right? But I think there's, in my opinion, there's a lot of different, channels to fundraise, right? Obviously, one is, friends and family. That's doesn't go away, and usually, as long as you're very transparent that can be lost money, then you're good to go.
Nothing to lose, yeah.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, obviously, then you have your angel investors that are individuals that are backing companies, and they do have spare money, and they usually, I've seen from my experience, they're very helpful. They just give you the money, they support you in whatever your journey is. Obviously, there is other things like VCs, right? They can give you a lot of money. They can give you also pressure that sometimes you might need, right? If you really want to build a big company. So they will be, tracking your KPIs and all that. But so that's, of course, another one. And then there's, other things like strategic investments, where you just raise money from somebody, not because necessarily of the money, but because of you want to align interests and make sure that, it becomes also your partner for your business, right? And, the fact that you co-own each other, or the strategic investor also share in your business, makes it more relevant that he's not going to run away from the partnership, right? But beyond that, obviously we knew that there was a wave of crypto. People have been raising money there, but also things like Indiegogo or Republic.co, another platform in the US, are alternative ways of fundraising, right? And basically they are divided, the crowdfunding ways of fundraising are divided mainly in two. One is where you sell your product before it's fully ready, right? And this is more your Kickstarter, your Indiegogo platforms. And the other one is more Republic.com, I think it's called, where you fundraise through, basically you give out your equity, and it's still a crowdfunding platform. So those two work slightly different, right? So one is really you're giving out equity. The other one, you don't need to give any equity. You say, look, I'm going to launch this amazing product and I want people to back me up, right? And I'm going to give you something extra, big discount or, free service for a year if you back my campaign, right? And this is, and we've seen that Kickstarter and Indiegogo have been extremely successful in attracting funds. I think Indiegogo attracted more than several $1 billion and
right.
Kickstarter even more than that, right? So those are ways for people to also test whether their idea can work and whether people react. I think one important message is I think Gillette, which had all the money in the world, launched a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign just to check whether the new product had appeal to the market, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not always, this kind of alternative fundraising methods, they solve other problems as well. So they don't only solve the fact that, you can collect money, which is always great, but you can also collect feedback from the market, which sometimes, VCs, they might have an idea, they like you or they don't like you, but they are not the market. All right. So we know that the final truth is the market, right? So that's also another advantage of those campaigns.
I think because this sounds, of course, music to my ears. We are helping startups to raise cash from family offices to venture capital and everything in between. But what I really think that each founder should do is not only focusing on the money itself, money is the tool, yes, but also try to engineer where they get the money from. So I can imagine you're mentioning validation could be a reason for crowdfunding, but it could also be very well a way to get additional press, right? That you choose Indiegogo in this case, where you have a consumer wearable for your company. You would like to illustrate as well to your investor base, but also everybody else who see, like, okay, we are out there. So I think it's really about, oh, I need $1 million. I'm going to get X amount of dollars from this party. I'm looking for strategic interest from a partnership that can catapult me to the next level. And we're locating $100,000 into a crowdfunding campaign, right? So it's more like putting the right ingredients again together and not only focusing on the VC as being the only way, because the VC, it comes with a lot of expectations, right? I
Yeah.
think that I think that's definitely a key point. So if you see, because this is just one thing that comes up in my mind, I think last week in the news, you have 100% see it coming by. Personally, I'm not a big gamer. Are you a big gamer?
My wife is, but I'm not much.
Okay, so have you heard the story about Fortnite?
No, I haven't. What happened there?
Oh, okay, so you know Fortnite, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
Fortnite, multi-billion-dollar company, insane, have right 350 million players worldwide. And what happened is that um, they need to pay between 15 and 30% to Apple or Android for all of the in-app purchases, right? So you're talking literally about hundreds and millions of dollars that are going to Apple and Google without them doing really a thing. While the Fortnite is already established. So what they did is they created an alternative way, and they incentivized their users to buy the guns, the special game, the special weapons through an alternative source, and therefore they were not going through the traditional route of Apple or Google. Now, then they did a lawsuit. So they fired, of course, a lawsuit to Google and to Apple for the specific reason that they have a monopoly in the market,
yeah,
and that they should re-evaluate that. Now, you can imagine if you have 340 million users, including your wife, being desperate to go playing that game where they spend a lot of their time in, they suddenly not able to play the game. Yeah, has a huge impact. So now they have 340 million people who are knocking the door of Apple. That indeed Apple and Google is insane for taking a monopoly position in the market. So whatever the outcome will be of this lawsuit, it will be a gigantic PR stunt where Fortnite can put themselves on the stage through the specific example. So my point here is like, okay, how do you use the PR or the media to really catapult your company into the other direction? Do you use these kind of strategies, or what would be strategies that you could use? Because I think it's extremely powerful. Putting your company in the media, it seems that you're doing very well, but it's all about storytelling, right?
yeah. No, look, I think you're right. I think again, it goes back to what your objectives are, right? So I think I've seen some startups are extremely out there in the media a lot. Some startups are a bit more shy and just trying to do their work. I think it depends what you are trying to achieve and why you want to be in the media, right? What's your main objective, right? So obviously, if you are a B2C company, being in the media is very relevant, right? Because you reach out to bigger audiences, you get they get to know your company and so on. Even for B2B is still relevant in terms of like, bigger customers can see validation through articles and all that. So I think overall it's still, whether you like it or not, or depending that your objective is something great to have, but to what degree you want to be in the media, it of course depends what you want to achieve. In our case, I think, Indiegogo is obviously also a media platform in that sense. So they promote you through their newsletters, they promote you through their social media posts, they promote you through their platform, and obviously they have a lot of users. And I think in our case, the reason why we decided to go with them is that we realized that our product was a global product, was very scalable in terms of the only thing you need is a software, is an app which you can download for free, and then a band that you can ship anywhere in the world, right? And we realized that, okay, why would we limit ourselves only to Southeast Asia, right? Before we were anchored, because once you do an event, it's a physical event, you have to be, you have to put your tech there, right? And of course we are not beforehand, our business was quite famous within our area, was quite famous in Southeast Asia, but not in Europe or US and so on and so forth, right? And if you are building a hardware product, US is a huge market for that. Europe is also big. So that was for us a conscious tool to go outside Southeast Asia, try to build from Southeast Asia something a bit more global that consumers, in Middle East or US, Europe can use, and that's why we decided to go with that platform. All right. So I think it's, again, I would invite all the entrepreneurs to think a little bit outside the boxes, and how, media can propel you, or certain platforms can propel you for really global reach and scaling businesses globally. And it only makes sense for certain businesses, right? If you have a very scalable business and that you don't require any problems, sure, go for it. If you have not a very scalable business, then there's no point of going in 10 countries or and so on and so forth, right?
Have you seen a lot of orders coming in from places that you would never expect to become your client?
Yeah, so it's actually very interesting. So obviously it has been a very steep learning curve from us. So the way, actually something that important maybe for the listeners to kind of understand how campaigns, if you want to launch your product on Indiegogo or Kickstarter, how it works. So the way it works is you need to set yourself a target on how much you want to raise, right? So that's, let's say you want to raise $100,000, right? Then what happens is, usually the rule is that in the first few days you need to raise at least 20 to 30% of that target. Right. And then in order to raise, so that's usually the rule. You would raise like 20, 30% in the first couple of days. And then during the remaining of the campaign, you raise the remaining 2/3. And in order to raise this, 1/3 in the first few days, you need to start preparing in advance. Right. So obviously it's a whole world, right? So you can, start preparing by yourself, but you can also engage. There's a lot of digital agencies that specialize specifically in that. There's a lot of PR agencies specialized in that. But what is important is that before your campaign starts, you need to start collecting interest, right? And this is where you need to start to do, probably digital advertising or any other means you might want to do in order to collect an email list of customers that want your product and will buy your product in day one, right? So it's creating that hype that is very important, right? So this is something that was new when I first kind of said, okay, yeah, we just launched it on Indiegogo, and then we see, no, there's a whole strategy behind a methodology, which I think many people might not know. And it's a whole big industry, right? So obviously the more time you have to prepare, the more you can build that database and that interest. And to answer your questions, when we started building that interest, we discovered a lot of things. First, we discovered that our product was very requested by families, right? I was thinking more of an individual, tech savvy guy, and like me and you, and we could just like have something cool and new. But then no, we saw that, people who were reacting to our ads on Facebook were mainly moms, married, 30 to 40 years old, and so on and so forth. So that was a new discovery. And then certain markets surprised us. Like, we had an amazing response from South Africa, just an amazing response.
Wow, yeah.
I don't know whether it was linked because they had a COVID situation going on there, but the response, we've been bombarded by messages from South Africa saying, I want this product, I want it for my family, I want it for my business, I want to be a reseller, I want to be a distributor. So that was one of the big surprises.
Yeah. This is very interesting to see where this is going, right? Because you were at that company, you had the wearable, you were previously before very much focused on events, and now you become more like a family play, right? So you could almost say, which is now a little bit something that we are not are we thinking about, but not really likely, is that, hey, let's go to an event. But let's say in 9 months from now or 6 months from now, when there's new regulations where everything is better controlled and the events are starting up again, then we could almost see that your first target group was very much, I guess, 20-ish to 30 plus ish, 35 is, let's say they're going really a house party and go full for it. And now you have your other product, which is really facilitating young moms, young families, which, let's say if people are 5 years old, right, they have a mother of around 30. So you have now a new target group between 30 and 45. Super interesting to see how that will play out in the future, actually. And what kind of licensing contracts there will be coming, right? And what you say, people there are, let's say, hey, can we become resellers? So I can imagine almost that there's a reselling program, and yeah, as soon as you buy the bracelet, yeah, automatically you have the app. Then people want to host maybe events in South Africa which you don't even know, and they can use the same bracelets again, right? So I think
yeah, we actually have received very recently a request for a 30,000 people or even more event in the US using the bands, right? So and look, once you start marketing your product globally, you start like, it's very interesting. My team before was, constantly in touch with like the local clients like Singapore, whatever, Thailand, Indonesia, and so on. But now there are calls with Turkey, Israel, New York, right? So people reach out big time. And this is what I also think important for startups that might be starting their business. I think, and this goes back to your original question of opportunity, innovation, and so on. Sometimes I feel that we're all founders and we want to persevere and we want to bang our head against the wall to crack the problem. But sometimes it's also a problem that, right? Because if you keep on kind of banging your head against the wall in something that would never be able to function, right, then it's useless. And this is also where you realize that if you it's all about timing. If your timing is good, then with a lot less effort you can get a lot more result, right? Yeah. This is something that I would invite everybody to think about, of whatever they're doing. Yeah. Well, it's a wave, it's a need, right? Are you addressing a burning need in the market, right, or not? And this is sometimes, when I first started my business, I never thought it that way. I was like, okay, I want to create a cool product and I think people will use it, right? You never really go back to say, okay, but how burning is that need, right? How can, are really people going to use it? Do they really need it, or they're okay like that? And this is what I think I would invite all entrepreneurs to really reflect on, is the so-called product market fit, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we forget about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what I like about what we were talking about, catching the wave, right? I mean, a lot of times, one of the analogy that I'm using is like, okay, you need to see a waterfall in front of you, right? And the water goes down, but if there's too much bricks in the water, then the water becomes very restless, like the rafting, right? So our goal as founders is truly to get the big bricks out of the water, so the water can start going faster and faster and faster. And then you will see, like you have right now, that you have the ability to come up with completely new ideas in high speed. I mean, I think that is that's what's happening here, right? You're seeing the opportunity, you're diving into it, you're innovating along, and I think maybe you don't even have yourself an idea where it will go, but the use cases, yeah, could be endless, right? I mean, that is
and you need to use also these opportunities like that to basically enter new segments or enter new territories or verticals, because like if you want to develop, let's say, product for schools, right? I could go back and start developing something for schools and then hit my head hard and go and try to sell it to schools, right? And eventually I might succeed, but it might take me years, right? Now, if I go to schools, I said, look, I can easily monitor all your kids' temperature, da 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 da. By the way, I can also have your, cashless canteen or contactless canteen.
Yeah.
Then wow, okay, makes sense, right? And it's a lot easier to kind of get there rather than just go, oh, I'll, make your cashless canteen. Yeah, sure, but I don't know, maybe next year. We're not too much
Yeah.
in a rush, right? But
No
now
urgency. Yeah.
you have a clear upselling opportunities because your way in is very clear, right?
Yeah, and in this case, it's just a good thing, but of course, sometimes also not really nice. You're using a little bit the fear, right? There's fear, what happens to me? So even if you would like to scale up your Pouchnation now to other geographies in the terms of events, I can imagine that a lot of international event organizers would love to use Pouchnation currently and putting on top of their posters like, okay, our bands, our wristbands are temperature control, so we know exactly what is happening and how safe our events actually are. And then you start with the brick of safety, and then the rest of Pouchnation, together with the Pouch Pass, with all the convenience of contactless payments, yeah, is actually a very nice add-on, right? So
Correct. No, look, I think to be honest with you, it's true. I mean, and there's a lot of debate also. Like we've been following our forums online. Some people say, and this is like a very kind of becomes an ethical problem. Oh, you guys are trying to make money on the virus, right? And but some other people say, no, hold on, look, they're actually trying to help businesses go back and start operating, right? So it really depends how. I mean, of course the whole virus is very sensitive, right? It's true, but depends how you look at it. I mean, first of all, I think it's very important that whatever you charge or whatever product you put out in the market is affordable, and I think
yeah,
that's what we're also trying to do. I mean, when we're not like charging $100 or $300 our wearables, I mean, they're pretty affordable for the masses. And I
yeah.
think that already shows that, our main objective is actually to try to, support businesses go back, make sure that, families, have a peace of mind. And I think this is what we are trying to stand behind, right? But of
Mm.
course, in this climate, there's a lot of different, debates around, products that are being released that are kind of related to the pandemic, right?
I think that's just the negativity of some humans, but where there's success, there's haters. And every logical thinking person, at least in my opinion, and if they say like, okay, this is you're taking advantage of the virus, I think you're doing something amazing. And I would say 100% take the wave for all the opportunities that are coming into your direction. Just a few things, right? Because I always like it to see how dynamic you and your personality and innovating you are. So, what is the way Ilya stays sane, right? I mean, you're doing this now for 7 years. You're also running a mentorship for the Plug and Play program, which helps founders to start up and scale their programs. You're jumping in all of these new things. You're running a remote company, which I'm definitely also want to talk about with you. But how do you stay sane? What are your key routines as a CEO to just get the maximum output out of you yourself, Ilya?
Well, that's challenging, right? So obviously, I think it's about obviously there needs to be a level of discipline, right? If you are not disciplined, then it's going to be difficult, right? If and I think methodology, discipline, personal discipline is important. Routines to a certain degree are also important. I think obviously it's tiring, man. It's tiring. I cannot deny that it's tiring to do a lot of things. But for me, it's a matter of structuring my week. What I do, and maybe that can help also. Like usually during the weekend, I don't work much, but what I do is I try to plan my week to know exactly what's going to happen when, so I pace it out,
Do you
right?
visualize it as well? Are you the type
I
of
actually, you know what I do? I have an Excel template that I created, which I can see 5 days of the week, and I divide it between. I put there my meetings. I have the calendar, but I still put it in the Excel because it makes me remember that I have a meeting. And then I put the two kind of like try to spread my to dos by the days of the week, right? And I divide them between personal to dos and work related to dos, right? So kind of and I do it during the weekend. So every day I wake up, I open my Excel and I know more or less what I need to do, on personal stuff and etc. So I think that helps me to plan my week. I do exercise a lot because I think we are all now stuck at home. So
Yeah.
I
For your
try to.
biceps, this is also recorded. You can show your biceps here
No,
too.
no, there's not much. I think it's personally like physical exercise keeps me like distracts me because we tend to be all the time on our phones or laptops, and I think it's very important. And then of course you try to create time for things that you want to do because life is too short just to do one thing, right? And meaning that you have to do one thing and you have to do it well, but like spending time with other startups, for example, as plug and play. It's not a paid role or anything, but I just enjoy it. I see new models, I see some patterns. It's also learning, right? So I think that there's a combination of discipline, curiosity, I would say, and that gives you that motivation to kind of be mentally sane, right? Because
Mm.
otherwise you can really feel all the pressure and the negativity, as you can say, because as a founder you're constantly bombarded by negative messages as well, right? And pressure and uncertainty and all. So it's not an easy thing, right? So but it kind of gets you get your thick skin, right? After a few years.
So so how far are you planning your business activities ahead?
Look, I think it really depends. I think nowadays it's very difficult to plan ahead for a long time because obviously you know uh, you never know what's going to happen, right? Is it lockdown and reopening so I usually I like to see where it should go, like a long term, like a 1 year plan. At least I know where it's going. And then but I think on the tactical initiatives, I think it's I'm usually planning at least every 2 months, 2 3 months, not longer than that, because it's very difficult to predict where you're going to be in the next 2 to 3 months, right? So I cannot say I have like a 1 year plan and I know everything is going to happen. If you have a more stable business in a more normal environment, yes, you can do that. You say, okay, this is my next year plan. I stick to it. I just push on the execution and so on.
Mm.
But in this environment, it's extremely volatile. So it's very hard to do that.
Hey, and coming back to indeed the planning, right? So your current team size is at this moment
We are about 60 people.
60 people, and we were discussing it. It's all remote driven. You were sharing the remote culture has already been starting a while ago. So can you teach people a little bit what's your holy, what's your secret sauce to get all of your team engaged, let them perform very well, dialing into the vision, I think that's a topic that everybody is dealing with. We have great ideas, but there's a human connection that we're missing. And how do you keep that and thrive on that wave again?
Look, I think it's obviously it's not easy, right? I think it's not easy to cascade down your vision to get people motivated, get them behind a certain target, a certain objective. Actually, I think like just to give an example of the Indiegogo campaign was a good example, because people, like we had like sales teams for a while, and they were trying to sell, but then like the B2B sales were not coming that fast because they were saying, yeah, sure, I can buy it later, just maybe next week, the week after. And it was kind of dragging, right? So then I said, no, guys, we're going to launch our Indiegogo campaign on the 4th, right? So we are going to launch. There will be these prices. After a while, the early bird price is going to expire. There will be new prices. So we have to go all out, right? So whatever discussions you might have, just tell them that that's it. If they
Yeah,
want, they need to get it, right?
yeah.
And that was a good objective where kind of the whole company managed to align against that objective, because they knew there was a timeline, there was a date. After that date, there would be the prices would change. So that kind of brought the company together, and everybody kind of was on board and cheering. And from designers to updating the page, to the sales team calling all their clients. And so I think sometimes it's a matter of whether you're not remotely or not, to work on that kind of 2 3 months objective, right? A big one that you want to tell your company, say, look, we need to do this, we need to hit it. And then people kind of start realizing the urgency, because
Mm.
otherwise the challenge in also especially remote operations is that it's a business as usual. People don't have the urgency. And also in startups, and I've been discussing this morning actually with a founder, is saying, look, exponential growth is not human. is counterintuitive, right? So people are not, how to say, used to grow exponentially, right? If you grow like, I don't know, 20% a year, 30% a year, for normal people, that's okay,
That's
but not
okay.
for startups, right?
No.
So you really need to break some barriers and some boundaries here to push people and align them on growing that, getting that to that exponential growth, or anyway, I would say exponential, not exponential, but high growth, right? And this is where very, very important to give that challenge and that objective and find people that can align with that, right? So not everybody will be aligned with it, right? So, and in remote environment is, of course, is more challenging, but now we live online. You know, everybody can open the Indiegogo page and see how many new backers we have. So that makes it easier, right? It's no secrets there. So transparency, I think, is also important when you communicate with your team. Be very transparent with what's happening, update them. The more they know, the more they buy into your vision, right? The less they know, the more they'll say, okay, whatever, I don't care, just do my piece, right? So the end-to-end approach can only happen when, you know, you're fully transparent about what's going on.
So have you organized your team into smaller parts in order to make the work easier for them on a remote basis?
Well, obviously you have. So I think that, you know, there needs to be a structure behind, right? So I think roles needs to be clear, and I think small things like regular touch points, and even things like using the video. What we realized is that we had many calls where people were present, but they probably were doing something else, right? Or like writing an email at the same time, so their attention was not there, right? And this is because their camera was not on. All right, so some of the things we are trying now to implement, that if we do have a meeting, means it's relevant for everybody that is in that meeting. So please put your camera on. So that means that you're actually present, right? Not just like listening in, but doing some other stuff, right? So I think those are things that, you know, those are a few takeaways that we had. In terms of organizing work, I think, you know, we just follow whatever structure we have, so that we don't have any particular new methods of organizing it. But I think this is more on the communication side, on, you know, being present and feeling that, look, you're not alone, and output driven culture. At the end of the day, I don't care if people do their job in 1 hour and then they chill for 10 hours. It's okay for me, as long as they deliver to the expected results, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because 2 weeks back we had Florian Holm, you know him, also on
Yeah.
the podcast. And then we were talking about similar things like the power of campaigning within your team, and especially when we're talking about remote working. I mean, everybody loves a party, right? And the more we can make small little parties into our business, and the party is the synonym of campaigning. So just like you have your Indiegogo campaign, right? You have other small bricks where the team collectively is working around, and it's all mini events in your business that really moves the needle faster forward. And it also gives a sense of achievement, right? I mean, rather than having a very, I mean, if every day would be the same, nobody would be very excited. And because people sitting already at home anyway, they are getting very bored. So a little bit of an excitement that they feel that they are collectively working to the same goal through campaigns and mini events within the company is very,
Yeah,
very powerful stuff. Yeah.
very true. I think very true. And this is why you kind of need to set up like something new every 2 months, at least, to make people a lot, kind of get them something new, right? What I think kills productivity and enthusiasm is the routine that is not exciting, right? And sometimes, yeah, you need to do that, but how do you package it? How do you package it to your team might be different, right? You can say, okay, we're from now on, we're going to be doing every day, you know, phone calls to get new clients, telesales, right? Boring, right? Same thing. But then if you say, look, you know, how about we have this, you know, target that we need to achieve, and then we, something happens, so let's just focus on these 2 months. Then I can rotate you to a different job scope, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. But it kind of gives you that different flavor, which is, which might, you know, be very different for the employees, right?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, and talking the last thing before we close down about remote, you have just again remotely closed another deal, right? We can keep it disclosed in who it is, but how did you manage that? So we were talking about remote working, and now you're closing remote deals as well without even seeing the investors, right? So can you share a little bit more with the listeners?
I think it is more difficult when you just start and just become an entrepreneur. It becomes slightly easier when you already built several businesses, right? And so what I think is easier from several perspectives. First of all, usually you know what you're talking about. Right? Before, when you just started, when I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 27, it was a bit different. I thought I knew what I was doing, but it was it's still, you're very green, so
Yeah.
you need to go through that experience. Secondly, also you've managed, I think is self branding and reputation is important, right? From founders, from investors, from everybody in the community, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to build that reputation that kind of make sure that people see you as a reputable person and a serious one, and and I think that makes things also easier. But then also look in even in doing fundraising talks with investor, I realized that when you have one-to-one conversations, over the phone, it can be very dry, right? Because sometimes people don't even, have their camera on. I noticed that,
Yeah.
and then it will be like extremely dry, and you will not be able to connect, right? So even how you pitch online is very different than how you pitch offline. If you pitch offline, the connection element is a lot easier because you feel the person, you see their
Yeah.
reactions, and that. So I think also here, it's very different. You need, first of all, you try to at least get the camera on yourself, and the person who is next, you're talking to, incentivize them to switch it on to create that connection,
Give
right?
them a
Because
bracelet. Yeah.
no, because otherwise it's like it's very difficult, right? If you don't see who's on the other way, you don't know whether he's in his bed half asleep or he's like fully on, right, following you. So I think the way you kind of pitch online is also can be very different, right? So they use your chat, send links, see, make it more interactive, right? There are some advantages, right? Because you can easily share your screen and show them something quick or send a new link. So I think there is the interactivity part, which is important. The sharing screen is important. The camera is important. So I think all these elements, if you sum them up, you can do a pretty good job, even probably better. And you can be a lot of efficient, right? You can have 20 meetings in a day as long as you schedule them. You're sitting on your table. You don't need to travel from one to another.
Yeah, I'm a strong advocate on that. I believe at least the first two meetings, you should be perfectly fine to run them through services like Zoom. And then as well, the fact of building the reputation and building the relations beforehand, so you're not completely new and people can do a quick Google and do a quick check-in with others, and your numbers, your data rules really make sense. Yeah, then it's typically putting the ball on the soccer field and just hit a home run, right?
Correct, correct.
Correct. Cool, man. So we have had a very nice time to spend. I think very valuable for everyone who has been listening here, learning about remote working, reinventing yourself during COVID times, checking out what's the best strategies to set you up for winning, the team campaigning, a super valuable session. Is there anything that you specifically would like to add as a last kicker, to give everybody some piece of advice?
Well, look, I think that the piece of advice is, never stay still, right? So I think, there's, you always, your movement, you're keeping on trying to do new things, and it always helps. It always brings result eventually, right? So I think that, some people might be discouraged by this pandemic or might lose their jobs, and I think might be a bit in a situation of, okay, it's all bad, I don't know what to do, and they just give up, right? So I think it's important that you never give up, right? You constantly try new things, whether it's doing webinars and doing some marketing while you are waiting for the business to pick up, or even doing a new business. So I think the key message is don't stay still, right? The world goes on in whatever way it is, and there are plenty of opportunities out there. Just grab them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, true pleasure that you was our guest today. Very likely we will post it already next week. For those of you who want to get their hands on one of those amazing wearables and be, at the stepping stone of a new movement when it comes to feeling safe, and maybe even later as well, enjoy Pouchnation and Pouch Pass on events, feel free to go to Indiegogo and yeah, take your advantage out of it. Ilya, and enormously thank you very much. Looking forward to connect with you soon in real life here in Bali, otherwise in Singapore. And I will catch up with you soon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Cool.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you guys for tuning in today at the Founders Tribe podcast. I truly hope you have found some inspiration and the golden nuggets so you can leverage this to lift your founders game. By the way, if you want to stay updated about our weekly releases, then please hit the subscribe button so you will never ever need to miss out and choose which one of the guests you can tune into. If you're planning to raise capital for your startup and would love to discover if you are fundraise ready, if your startup has what it takes, then please take our free signature fundraise quiz, where we will benchmark your answers against our 9-step Date Your Investor framework. As a result, you will receive a 20-page tailor-made recommendation report to be better tomorrow. Want to find out more? Go to www.thestartupchef.com, www.thestartupchef.com. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.